All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I cannot believe that we are beginning our final night of the lessons from the 4 levels of healing. And it has been, as George can echo, it has been fun and it's been exciting. And we've been so blessed with our speakers so far and what they've offered us. And I tell you, I have personally been putting a lot of these ideas that our speakers have shared with us to work, and especially just in the sharing that we all have been able to do amongst each other. You know, there's so much that we can gain just from listening to other people's stories and how different people are approaching life in this moment, particularly as you know, these are, there's not even a word that really describes these times. People say unprecedented, people say challenging. Complex was one that I used today in an email. I don't even have one word that describes what we're going through, but I tell you what, I am glad that I can spend the time with you all because it's been life-giving. It's been life-giving for me. So this idea of as so many people are passing away, experiencing COVID, and not just COVID, but all other kinds of issues are happening and illnesses that we're dealing with, and news, you just don't know what's going to come about. Understanding how we integrate our spirituality with our mental, emotional, and now our bodies. How do we take care of our bodies? That's where I think this is going to be a good closeout for us to just sort of go full circle with the topic for tonight. And so I want to introduce you to someone who I love and have known for a few years now, and have come to really love her. And we've been working together as I have tried to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And I say that in transparency because I know many of you have sent notes and texts and just want to make sure that Reverend Denise is taking care of Reverend Denise. And so Laura Laine has been a big part of that. So you get a chance to get in on one of my little secrets that's no longer a secret tonight. But here's why I've invited her to come and talk to us today. And Laura is a dietitian. She's a nutritionist, but she's also a spiritual director. And that's where we both connect as two spiritual directors who, you know, support each other in this day and time. And so one of the times Laura and I talked, she asked me a question and she says, Denise, what are you hungry for? And so when you think about that question, what are you hungry for? It's not just what are we hungry for in terms of our minds, but also in terms of our bodies and what we choose to put in our bodies. And so Laura has been instrumental in helping me make good choices about what I put in my body, and to really think about that question when I do want to eat something. What am I really hungry for? And sometimes that hunger is not just food in the way that we see food. Sometimes that hunger is to feel loved and cared about. And so, Laura, I'm going to say in front of everyone, you know, thank you so much for what you have blessed me with over these last several years, even before the pandemic. So tonight, I hope you all get nourished by what Laura Laine has to offer to this group. So with that, I want to introduce Laura Laine.
Well, thank you all, everybody. I've been so looking forward to this, and I was so impressed with this book. I mean, it was one of those short books that I just think everybody should have. You know, I would love to put that in a high school classroom. I think it's something that we all need. When I, you know, just a little bit about my background and why I'm here today. So I started out as a dietitian. I've been a dietitian for 40 years, but then I had the blessing of being an administrator of a very large church. And it was at that time that I really started seeing the connection between the altar of the church and that family table, and then bringing that back to the connection of the body. And I work a lot with eating disorders and addiction and pediatric population and also families. And one of the things that really struck me was how there's such the demise of the family table. And a family, that it means just who is living in a household. It doesn't mean, you know, it has to be, you know, a mom and a dad and whatever. It's however this household is made up. So I developed Sofia Grace Center, God and I did about 11 or 12 years ago. But I want to explain to you what that means. So I'll start out with my screen share here. And go here, I guess. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Good deal. All righty. So my business is called Sofia Grace Center for Nutrition, Health, and Spirituality. But what is Sofia Grace Center really? So we know the word Sophia, which means wisdom. Wisdom was with God before the beginning of time, right? So it really stands for the wisdom and grace of the human body. And what I know, when people come into my practice, they come in because they're hurting in some way. Something has gone awry in their body. And what I tell them is that our job isn't to just get rid of this illness, it's to go within this illness and see what our body is really trying to tell us. That's where the gift is in there. So this is all about what is it that truly nourishes and provides that satisfaction that we seek. This picture right here has picture. Denise, how do I get this thing up? Can y'all see? Can you see the ribbon? I don't know how to push it back up. I guess y'all can't, right? You're just seeing my slides, but you're not seeing that ribbon and above it.
Yes, well, we see the pictures of the profile pictures, and different people may have different views. So
Okay.
for those of so you all who are watching, you may change your view so
Okay.
that you can either do side by side view or grid. But so
Okay,
you
so
have a
make sure
different-
y'all are seeing it and everything. Okay,
yes,
perfect.
everything is. I assume everybody's seeing everything. Can you? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
except for me, I just missed. Okay. Alrighty. So let me go back here. One. Okay. Get out of here. Sorry, I'm not the best Zoom user in the world. Okay. So here, there's just a bunch of pictures, and you see there's a little picture of y'all's church right here where it says love lives here. And this is my son and his husband. I just want to introduce them. That just happened in this past year. And then these are just different families, but it also talks about what really nourishes in our life. So we're going to go through. All right, why is this not going on? Okay. So we're going to kind of look at what does this body rhythm mean? We're going to look at body rhythm and balanced living, and we're going to look at nourishment. So why do we look at nourishment? If you look into scripture, there's probably more than 800 texts for hunger and thirst. And there's probably only about 270 scriptures for faith. So God knows that we hunger and thirst. And so that's how God has gotten our attention, right? We hunger for righteousness. We hunger for food. We hunger for love. We hunger for so many things. And hunger and thirst are those deepest, deepest desires. So one of the things we'll be talking about is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs that shows some of those things that Denise listed in the very beginning that we really hunger for, but that we try to satisfy it in that tangible aspect of eating or not eating. So we'll look at barriers to nourishment. So to nourish is to nurture. To nourish is to nurture, to take care of. We'll look at the body wisdom. And then we're going to have a time where we can assess our own personal attention to our own body, mind, and spirit to bring together these 4 talks that you guys have been so into and see how can I really put this in practice in my daily life. So what is this ritual rhythm? So we see in Ecclesiastes that there's a time for everything and a season for everything under the sun, a time to be born and die and to embrace and time to refrain from embracing, a time to love and a time to hate and a time for war and a time for peace. So you can see in life, we live life like this, but everybody thinks we live life in a straight line. And in actuality, we live in God time, and God time is Kairos time. Kairos. Kairos time is a spiral, meaning that the past, present, and future are always upon each other over and over and over again. I like to also see it as the Paschal mystery. It's all about passion, death, and resurrection. Every single moment of our life is these passions. We have to die to things in order to rise to new life. So what is this ritual? Many people understand ritual. Maybe if we look at special occasions, like maybe on Christmas, you have a certain ritual. You eat certain foods, you have certain people over, you buy certain gifts, you do everything in a certain order, okay? But ritual is really actually a well-known patterns that provide an aesthetically pleasing and emotionally reassuring sense of social belonging. That's a lot of words, but what does it mean? It means that I have a ritual to my day. I like to compare it to like a preschool classroom. In a preschool classroom, those kids know what to do. They come in, they take their coat off, their lunch, they put it in the back room, and they go and they sit in circle time and they wait for orders, right? Okay. Us during our days, we maybe have a certain time that we wake up, we get dressed either, at one time, we may do our prayer at one time, we eat at a certain time, those kinds of things. These kinds of things actually make us feel stable in life. They give us a grounding, they give us a foundation, and we're going to talk about each one of these separately. This is just an amazing book by Elizabeth Hoffman Reed. This is one of the writers within there, but Elizabeth Hoffman Reed wrote this book, which is called Come to the Table. And she's an Episcopal priest. It was written back in 1998, actually about the same time as this other book was written. And she just talks about how does God see food? So what is this ritual rhythm? So our bodies were made for ritual and rhythm. And guys, I wanted to say, if anybody has a question as I'm going on, please raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask the question. I'm happy to do that because there is information in here. I want you to be able to understand it, okay? So we follow a light dark cycle. We rise in the daytime and we go to sleep at night. I feel sorry for those people that have to work in the middle of the night and, like nurses and people that are running our world in the middle of the night. God knew that wasn't me. I don't run the world in the middle of the night. My bedtime is probably just a little bit after this talk, probably about 8 or 8:30. I am definitely a morning person, okay? But we follow this light dark cycle. We wake up in the morning, and as the day goes on, our adrenaline starts increasing, okay? So in the morning, a lot of times we're not that terribly hungry. We're not hungry because we've been fasting all night. So that's when a lot of people will say, today's the day, I'm just not going to eat any breakfast this morning, right? Then at lunchtime, I'm still not that hungry. I'm really into my work. I'm just going to eat a little bit of food, whatever. So then we keep going, and about 5 o'clock comes, and finally I'm so hungry that I not only eat then, I eat continually throughout the night, right? So instead, what we want to do is we want to have this balance throughout the day. The reason why that happens to us is because our adrenaline starts going down, ready for sleep. So we have a heart that beats and lungs that breathe. Okay, so they have a rhythm. Our heart beats probably about 60 to 80 beats a minute. If it's off rhythm, the doctor knows and wants to know, is something wrong with you? Is it beating too fast? Is it beating too slow? Okay, our lungs. Our respiration is probably about 15 to 20 breaths a minute. Most of us never even think about that. But when the nurse is measuring your pulse, he or she is also counting your breaths as well. Questions when you go to the doctor. Are you sleeping? How are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you drinking water? Weight and blood pressure? Any kind of complaints or problems? Every one of these lets the doctor know how your body rhythm is. How is it being affected? And as we get older, every year we get older, we see things that maybe we didn't see before. Because the thing is our body just can't take the stress that we throw on it as much when we get older. And it really starts acting out finally, and you are almost forced to listen to it. So I'm going to describe something that some of y'all may have heard of, some of you may not have heard of, but it's called intensive care unit psychosis. The reason why I'm describing this is because it describes a lot about the life we live in, but it also in some ways describes kind of what some of the aspects of what's going on with COVID and with this pandemic. So in the intensive care unit, the doctors noticed when people were in there for a while that they became psychotic. they lose their minds, okay? Because they're experiencing debility, stress, and pain. And so they look to see what are some of the reasons for this. Well, there's sensory deprivation. Now they've changed the hospital so that they really have to have some sort of a window where a patient can see out. But they're in a room often away from family, friends, and all that's familiar. COVID has put together this same thing, right? Okay, a lot of people have been away from everybody that they love. You may have a window, but you really haven't been able to do the things that you usually do. Sensory overload. In the ICU, they are tethered to noisy machines day and night. Things are beeping, the lights are on, all these things. It messes with the body rhythm. Pain, sleep deprivation, disruption of this day and night rhythm. So essentially, there's been a loss of control over life. And that's really a lot that's happened with this pandemic and so many of the other things that are just happening in our world right now. So in effect, we also have a fast-paced life coupled with technology that can make these same symptoms. I'm sure some of you guys have a cell phone. Maybe all of you have a cell phone, okay? I remember I didn't have an iPhone until I don't remember what number, but I was convinced that I had attention deficit disorder after I got this iPhone. And it was my daughter that pointed out to me, she goes, Mom, you realize it's just an instrument. You have ADD, that's your own problem. But what the problem was because we are seekers. We like to see and find things. So now you have this phone that's telling you to do all these things, right? Saying, charge me, give me some Wi-Fi, we got a new email, answer this call. We have a restaurant check-in, right? Yes, yes, yes. I mean, I never cared whether I lost my phone or not back in the 80s or early 90s because I didn't have one. I had a phone, I had an answering machine. And if I got a call from my work, I had to stop at a gas station and make a phone call and call into the hospital, right? So, and I know that sounds crazy and we thought this was going to simplify our life, but in fact, it's made it just nuts, So we have to be very careful about this. I don't take my phone into the bedroom. Once I stop at 8 o'clock at night, it is in the kitchen and it doesn't go back there. Even when my kids were younger, I said, God's going to let me know if I've got to figure out something. Okay. But I don't need to be attached to this thing all the time. And this is causing a lot of us to go nuts because of being connected all the time. Every time you get a beep on your phone, your adrenaline goes up, whether it's even if it's just a coupon from Palais Royal. Okay. If you get a beep on your phone, it makes your heart rate go like that. And every time it does that, it causes a stress response in your body. Okay. So just something to think about and something to watch in yourself so that you can know how you can best make those changes on your own. So what happens? We also have this fast food nation. Okay. God never wanted food to be fast. Never. As a matter of fact, if we look how God fed the Israelites in the desert, God rained them down manna. And then when they got so mad, what did God rain them down? He rained them down some quail too. Okay. But because hunger is such a need in our life, what did the people want to do? They started hoarding the manna. When they hoarded the manna went bad. It went sour. It wasn't good anymore. So God knew he didn't want them to work on Sunday, so he gave them double manna on their Sabbath, gave them double manna before the Sabbath, right? So they would have enough food. But we get so fearful if we're not going to have food. So somewhere down the line, someone developed what this thing is called fast food, okay? But not only was it fast and we could achieve it, what it did was it took out one of the most important rituals of our day, which is sitting down at the table and dining with ourselves, with our God, with our neighbor, with our family. Instead, how does this happen? It happens in the car on the way home, right? Or it's taken to the soccer game or wherever it is, but it's not a dining experience. And then I like to look what's in the fast food. The fast food, really, you can almost see that there's not a lot of nutrition in it. And if I eat this fast food on a regular basis, especially as I've gotten older, you can see I have to take a drug to counteract it. If I eat that, I'm going to need antacid, or I'm going to need some Pepsid, or I'm going to need some Zantac, or I'm going to need whatever it is. So what do? We go, oh, I just need to get a bunch of Zantac, because I got to eat and I have this indigestion. Never going back and asking the body, do you like pizza? Do you like pizza at midnight? Do you like this? Right? Too much race. George is shaking her head. Yes, we like all of that, but we have to really pay attention to what our body likes and when it likes it, right? Okay, so this is what's happened as we've gotten into this fast food nation. So let's look a little bit more about what does eating say about us. So this is a connection between our relationship with food and our inner life. There's a man that writes this book called Nourishing Wisdom. His name is Mark David. It's probably one of the best books I've ever read because I think he really puts together a lot of everything from the scientific to the spiritual aspect of food. And at the end of each chapter, he has reflection questions that you can look at. But he says that how we eat reflects how we live. Our hurrying through life is reflected in our hurrying through our meals. Our fear of emotional emptiness is seen in our overeating. We overeat because we're trying to fill something that is never, ever going to be filled this side of heaven. St. Augustine says that God, you made us for yourself, and we will not rest until we rest in you. But we're always trying to fill up that space that will never, ever be filled, except by God. Our need for certainty and control is mirrored in strict dietary rules. There have never seen so many dietary rules in the world as there are now. And none of them, I'd say that most of them are not coming from nutrition experts. They're coming from people that are trying to control the body. And our looking for love in all the wrong places is symbolized in our use of food as a substitute for love. Okay? Because food doesn't leave you. Food's always there. Food tastes good. Food is easy. But eventually, it will be that really bad relationship, and it keeps calling to you, even though your body is really in pain. So nothing given to the Lord will be wasted, including our limitations, insufficiencies, and brokenness. Why did I add that there? I added that there because if we look at what God does, God multiplies everything and makes it good and makes it into bread that can feed us. So our limitations, our insufficiencies, our brokenness, in effect, are all bread that also feed us if we let God transform this and open our minds and see things in a new way. So he goes on to say that awareness of these connections increases the potential for our personal and our inner satisfaction. Sometimes we don't understand what we do. I think it was St. Paul that said that. Why do I do all of the things that I don't want to do? Right? Changing the way we eat, we change the way we live. Focusing our attention on eating, we learn to focus our attention in any situation. Mindful eating is a meditation practice. It's a meditation practice. One of the things that I do in one of my talks is I give everybody one of those little cutie oranges, like a little tangerine. And I walk them through this process. I go, okay, I'm going to do this step by step. I mean, you have to listen to me. Say, I want you to first scrape the outside of the orange and I want you to smell it. Well, everybody's ready to just tear into this orange. And I'll see people tearing into it. I go, stop. I didn't say to do that yet. I said to smell the orange. Then they open it up and they start trying to take pieces out. I said, wait a minute, I didn't tell you to take those pieces out. Then I have them smell it more. And then I have them take that orange apart and separate every single piece and put it on their plate. And then I have them look at it and bless it. And then I say, now you may pick up one piece at a time and enjoy it. Okay. So that is a meditation practice. It slows us down, makes us enjoy food. One of the reasons we overeat is because we don't even remember that we've eaten. It'd be like feeding a baby with our head turned away and then just feeding the baby like this. And that's how we feed ourselves. We look at our computer screen, we have our food on the side, we don't even look at our food, we don't even notice ourselves, and we just eat. Enjoying food, enjoy nourishment in all its forms. Remember, to nourish is to nurture. Loosening dietary restrictions and opening up to life. And accepting our body as it is and learning to love ourselves for who we are. Not all of us were meant to look the same way. We're not. That would be so incredibly boring. It would just be boring. We're all supposed to be different shapes, different sizes, different colors, different everything. And that is the beauty of it. And when we eat with dignity, we live with dignity. So we say to the Lord, give us, Lord, our daily bread. All of life is manna from heaven if we have eyes to see and ears to hear. So everything that happens in our life is manna. It gives us something and can feed us if we look at it in a new way. So I keep saying to nourish is to nurture. God says, gather the fragments left over so that nothing will be wasted. We see this in John 6. Nutrition systems are characterized by the interaction. We have the biological and the physiological, but most of all, it affects our social, emotional, cultural, and spiritual needs. My dogs, my two labs, could care less whether they sit next to somebody else and eat. Their total function is to satisfy that stomach, okay? But us, it's different, okay? We eat with our companions. The word companions means the person whom I share my bread with. From the word companis, C-O-M-P-A-N-I-S, the person whom I share my bread with. And that sharing of the bread is not just the food that I share. It's my day. It's my life. It's my feelings. It's myself. That's how we feed each other. And that's how the Lord feeds us as well. Our dietary philosophy needs to take us past our physical body into the deepest nourishment that sustains our heart and soul. And this is me as a nutrition practitioner. We need to treat the whole person. And that's what we do. Sometimes people don't understand when they come to me why I'm asking them all these other questions. They think they're going to come and I'm going to give them this diet and it's going to be on a piece of paper and I'm going to proclaim it good and it's going to be magic and they're going to go home and all is going to be well. But it doesn't happen that way. Because if you come to me, there's a reason, because it's kind of like the AA, like my life has become unmanageable, right? But instead of looking at it as a failure, we look at it as an aha moment and a blessing that we've been able to open the door, come out of our egos and go a little bit deeper in to see, hey, what is this here to tell me? I want to live my life in a different way. So like animals, we eat to survive. But we as humans transform this simple feeding into a ritual art of dining. To me, there's nothing better than a good table setting. You know, I used to tease my mom for all the dishes she has. Now I've got a lot of dishes, okay? A good table setting is just beautiful. It invites the person to come to the table. We create customs and rites. I think we have such an incredibly beautiful country that we have so many different walks of life and so many different ways of celebrating food. I mean, before, like back in the 60s and 70s, there was very few. I think I knew of like one Chinese restaurant around, you know, but now there's all kinds of restaurants because we get to celebrate in all these different ways. So we create customs and rites that turn out to be as crucial to the well-being as proteins and carbohydrates. At our Thanksgiving table, according to my brother, it needs to be canned yams with marshmallows on top and whatever sugar you put in it. I tried to bring healthy yams one time and it did not go over well. It did not go over so well that he makes his own yams to make sure that no one messes up his yams again, right? Because that's what he wants on that day. Should he eat them every day? Probably not, but that's his ritual and he needs it, and that's what makes it feel right. Everything about eating, including what we consume, how we acquire it, who prepares it, and who's at the table is a form of communication, rich with meaning. And Elizabeth Hoffman Reed's book, she talks about something has to die in order for us to live. The lettuce had to die. The cow had to die. The pig had to die. They gave their life for us so that we could eat. I remember my son, when he was little, he said, "Mom, do you think that the cow knows that it's going to die?" I said, "You know, I'm not really sure how big the cow's brain is. But in some ways, maybe there's something in there that the cow knows its purpose. You know, this is what is going to happen." And so, but the problem with our food supply is that we don't treat that reverently anymore. It's all about money, you know, and that's why you've seen a lot of this come back out, like about grass-fed beef. That's what cows were supposed to have anyway. It was grass-fed. And God gave us dominion over the animals and the plants. Dominion does not mean domination. It means that we take care of them. We feed them the food that they need to have because we love them and we care for them and we know that we live in this community together. Our attitudes and practices and rituals around food are a window into our most basic beliefs about our world and ourselves. That sounds like so incredibly philosophical, but it's really pretty darn basic when we get down to it. Jesus also in John 6 says, have the people recline. Then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks and distributed to those who were reclining. I love this scripture. The reason why I like it is because this says nothing about fast food. It's not fast food. It's recline. Take a load off. Sit down on this grass. I want to feed you. And he didn't say I would feed anybody standing up. He said he distributed it to those who were reclining. We cannot get fed if we don't sit down or recline like they did in those days. Now we're going to look at this hierarchy of human needs. Okay, some of you guys may already know that. We probably learned it way back when, but especially if you're an education major or a spiritual director or anybody else, this is something that we really need to know. So what is it? This hierarchy of needs, the way it works is it's a pyramid. We have to fix the basic before we can move to higher levels. We have our physical needs. And in our physical needs and our biological needs, that's air, water, food, and shelter. If we do not have those things, it's very difficult to move up to the higher levels of being. These are basics of life. And when we raise children, we want to make sure that they have security and safety, that they know that they're taken care of, that they're going to be protected, that there's order in their life, that it's stable, and that they have all of their needs met, right? We have to have that. And the same thing happens within our own life. If we don't have that and we're not meeting that, our body might be screaming out. If we're not stopping to eat, our body might not think that we really have any food to feed it, except for this really bad food. And from that, we can move up the chain. Okay, we can then belong to people. And when we have people in our lives, then we can move farther up into our esteem of our achievement, our status, our self-respect. And then we can move up and appreciate music and art and nature and move even further into that personal growth and then that transcendence in our spiritual needs. So you can see there's an arrow that goes up and down. And we don't live our life in a straight line. There are some times, and we're all the way back to this safety. Maybe we got ill, and that's all we can do is just basically be in the hospital and be taken care of. We're at that point, yes, we want that family and friends. That's been one of the saddest things about COVID, to know that if you're in the hospital, your family can't visit you. I mean, how heart-wrenching is that to die alone? And what these nurses are going through, because they become that family. They become that. So I'm just saying that at different times in our life, we're able to go up this mountain, but other times we're down near the bottom. Okay, because that's what has to get taken care of first. So we have this hierarchy. And Jesus, this is also one of my favorite scriptures, but it's Matthew 20. I think I forgot the 25, but it's 25, 35 through 36. And it says, for I was hungry and you gave me food, was thirsty and you gave me drink, a stranger and you welcomed me, naked and you clothed me, ill and you cared for me, in prison and you visited me. So why do I say that? God wants us to let God give these things to us, as well as we need to make sure that we're providing these things to ourselves. Okay? We usually don't give ourselves a break. Okay? We need to make sure that we're accepting our emotions, our feelings. If we are ill, that we need to slow down, that we don't have to keep going on in life. Okay? Every one of us has all of these different hierarchy of needs. It's not like just somebody has them. We all have them. So I encourage you to go and to really explore these more, because a lot of times what we're missing are something in here. And because of that, we're missing something, we're reaching out in something that's never going to satisfy. If we have grief, and I know, that you've got a lot of times there's been people dying from your church. And so there are grief and there are losses and things are different. And sometimes it's not just death that are losses. Just simply not being able to go and see people is a loss. And it's a grieving time. And in this unknown period of time that we're in, we call it, used to be the freshman 15, now it's the COVID 15, because what do you got? It's that food that satisfies. Okay, so now I'm going to go through each body rhythm. Is there any questions so far? Or I see there's something in the chat. Am I supposed to be looking at that, Denise?
No, well, the chat, we don't have questions in the chat, but I would love for if you're okay with someone making a comment right at this point.
Sure, comment, questions, whatever. Yes, Angel.
What happens if a lot of that has gone on with the pyramid back there, but it's like really not in that order? Like
okay, explain that more to me.
Like if we go back to the pyramid, like some things that are at the top of the pyramid, I was able to get those closer to the bottom of the pyramid.
Meaning that you were able to really go
well,
into that?
like family, friends, love, and relationships. That one there did not come after safety and needs. That one came more. That one would be up there in between self-actualization and transcendence for me.
And I think that that's just fine.
Okay.
If that's how it happened. Sometimes for people, especially it depends on what has happened in the family and what's happened in the world. And if there has been struggles in those areas, it may be that right there, we needed God and everything else to find out who we were and to accept ourselves as a person. Brene Brown, I'm sure many of y'all are familiar with her work, but she talked, and it's actually Maya Angelou that talks about this first, but it's that we need to belong to ourselves before we can belong to others. A lot of times our life is spent fitting in. And when we fit in, we're not belonging to ourselves. And so I totally see what you're talking about, Angel, is that going up to this transcendence, your own personal growth and spiritual needs, by coming to know yourself and coming to this level of belongingness, now you can welcome the other pieces of it. And a lot of this is so much midlife, does that make a little more sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I know I haven't traveled a traditional path.
I think it's beautiful.
That definitely fits in.
Yeah, I can tell. I love your background there. It looks like you're an artist. Or
yes,
I just love it. You kind of have some really cool things in there. So, and what is a traditional path, right? And I think that's beautiful. Everybody's path is what their path is. So, anybody else? All right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we'll go through each one of these systems. So we'll be going through everything that was in her book. But first I'm going to focus just on this eating piece of it, okay? So, and it happened while he was with them at table. He took bread, said the blessing, broke it, gave it to them. With that, their eyes were open and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. I chose that scripture because it comes back to that slowness in eating. That if we are eating things so rapidly and we're not taking that time to see, we're not going to find Christ at the table. And where do we find Christ? We find Christ within ourselves, within that food that we're consuming, which is nature, and the persons that we're sitting at that table with. So we want to look at the rhythm of eating, back to the rhythm of the body. Do I have stomach pain when I eat? GERD means gastroesophageal reflux disease, heartburn, indigestion. Do I have bloating? Do I have constipation? Do I have diarrhea? Some of these things may just maybe that you have food intolerances, but it could also be that some of the foods that you're choosing just might not be something that your body can handle. Or it can also mean I'm eating too quickly. It should take you 20 minutes minimum to finish a meal. Minimum, not maximum, minimum. What I'll tell people in a way to practice this is to set a timer for 20 minutes. If you only have one bite left on your plate, you need to wait till the timer goes off at 20 minutes, and then you can have the last bite. Okay, so that we can kind of reestablish this. Digestion takes place from the mouth all the way till it comes out of the body. Am I gaining weight or am I losing weight? Maybe you had an intention to lose weight. Maybe you had an intention to gain weight. If that was it, then that's great. But if you didn't, we need to look at what's going on. Meal timing and spacing. Our meal should be spaced probably about every 4 hours. We as Americans think we need to have something in our mouth about every, I don't know, hour, 2 hours, whatever. We get bored and we think that food is the answer to it, right? So instead, it's really about every 4 hours. Some people need to eat a little more often. Some people have more the 6 meal a day approach, but our stomach empties about every 3 to 4 hours. And if you wait for that to happen, that in itself is reestablishing the rhythm and the ritual of the body. And it helps with all of these things because now the body can take in more food and you're not just putting food on top of food, okay? But it takes about that long for the stomach to start emptying the contents into the intestines. Can you identify your senses in a meal? The one thing about eating is it meets everything. There is taste, there is smell, there is sound. There, of course, is sight in there. And of course, touch is in the body and in the hands and everything else. When I work a lot with pediatric patients, and when something happens with their eating, like they get extra picky or they start having food aversions, those kinds of things, most likely, oftentimes, something's going on in their life, whether it's at school or the family or whatever. Because eating is a nurturing place, okay? So think about that when you're eating. Can you identify your senses? Like the cutie orange I told you about. Do you eat or do you starve to cover your emotions? Now, let me clarify this. Sometimes if we are really having high level emotions, like some real huge stress in our lives and our anxiety is up, we're at a fight or flight level and we just may not be hungry because all of our blood is essentially gone to the fight or flight, ready to fight, you know? But if we're just not eating because if I don't eat and I starve myself, I don't feel, then that's what an issue is. Or if I just binge because I've got an emotion and don't feel, there's an issue with that too. And there are some people that do purge their food, or purging can also be over exercising as well. And then what's your socialization like? Do you eat by yourself or do you eat with others? And if you live by yourself, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't sit at the table and enjoy it. Sit at the table, light a candle, see that as eating with Jesus, say your prayer, and enjoy and savor that food that's set in front of you. This is a prayer every time we eat, if we let it be. Just sitting at the table. So is this family connected? No, they're not. Now, the one way they are connected is that they're sharing of the same loaf. They are sharing of the same loaf. Every one of them has meat, broccoli, rice. That in itself is incredibly important, okay? Everybody coming to the table and eating their separate fast food meals is already a disconnection. When I share the same food with my companions, that makes a difference. But we can see what this technology has done. Nobody is connected at that table. And part of the feeding is supposed to be sharing our day and sharing our personhood. That's what it's supposed to be. So why eat at the table? So Jesus says, here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. He even says in one of the renditions of this, and I will sup with them. Sup, eat dinner. So we commune with God, with nature, with our companions. It's a time to relax and be fed. Really, some of the other traditions besides Christianity, like in the Jewish tradition, it says that whoever does not thank the Lord before they eat is a thief. Is a thief. Okay, so we take so much. Instead, it's can I relax and be fed? Receive this love and restore my body rhythm. It's a time to pray and be grateful for the food, grateful for who prepared it, grateful for the animals and the vegetables that gave their life for it. And it's a time to communicate. It's a time to offer Thanksgiving, just Thanksgiving for the day, and step away from technology. And it gives us a threshold throughout the day. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Each one has a combination of what we need to have. Breakfast isn't supposed to be the smallest meal of the day. They're all pretty much can be pretty equal as we go through that day. So why don't I eat at the table? If you don't have a table, get a table. That's all I can say. All right. And what modifications need to be made so that I can do this? And I tell families and people that have kids and they're in sports and things like that. And we had the same thing when my kids were growing up too. Oftentimes the table is what gets pushed aside. And it's a sadness. I tell my parents, I go, if you want your child's conscience to be formed by you, have a family table. If you want it formed by the world, don't have a family table. How can you tell whether you have enough time for things? If you do not have time to sit at the table and eat your meals most of the time, wherever that table may be, then you have overcommitted yourself. Okay, so we need to have time for these thresholds during the day, which are eating. All right, physical activity. I call it a stroll with your soul, a parable walk. Jesus tells all these parables, but how many people really know what they mean? Most people don't even get out in nature anymore. No, but out there, those trees and those leaves and those birds and butterflies, everybody's got a message to tell you. It's an encounter in daily life through movement. Whoever says he abides in him ought to walk in the same way in which he walked. Jesus walked 3 to 10 miles a day, and that was required back in his day because he went from, town to town, right? But we can do the same thing. All it takes to be able to exercise and have movement, if you can have movement and your legs work, is to walk. That's all it takes, and to walk outside. Now, if you struggle with that, then we have to figure another way around it. But when I assess this in my office, I'm going to look at your job and see, is it a desk job or is it manual labor? Do you do anything outside? My husband's convinced that nobody in the world does their yard except him, but I tell you, the man never struggles with weight, but doing yard work is everything from creative bent to exercise. It's everything. Grocery shopping. Going to the grocery store if you can. I know some people are limited now because of COVID, but going to the grocery store is exercise. Schlepping that stuff to the car, exercise. Preparing food, walking your dogs, all of those things. And then there's exercise programs. So what keeps me from physical activity? It could be disease or physical impairment, but a lot of times when our life gets busy, this is the other thing that goes, is activity. And this is one of the big rocks that needs to be put in our life and not taken out. And we require at least 1 hour of movement a day. In the Amish studies, the Amish males go 18,000 steps a day, and the women are about 12 to 14,000 a day. So us trying to get our 10,000 in, one of my friends is a priest, and he's been walking, but it's been too hot at night. And he said he only had 5,000 steps. And so he got his little pedometer out or whatever it is, and he walked around the rectory for 45 minutes to get those 5,000 more steps in. But he did it. So we can do it. So in some ways, those little Fitbit things can be good for you. I don't have one because I don't want to know that much about myself, but I have a regular exercise program. So I know, that I'm getting at least 7 hours in a week. Now my 7 hours may be done in 5 days, but I'm one of those people that loves to exercise. I take a walk with anybody, anytime, anywhere. A lot of times that's what I do for spiritual direction, is I take walks with people because I love doing all that stuff. So, but I know there's people that don't like it very much. But I promise you, we're lucky that we don't have to farm the land anymore. So it restores the rhythm of the body. It gets those stress hormones out. Most of us are tired from the neck up. Okay. But all this adrenaline and everything that we're keeping in our bodies needs to get out somehow, and hopefully not by hurting somebody else or hurting ourselves. Okay. It reduces stress. It restores balance. It's a way to connect as a family, and it really releases tension. And it's a good way to spend time in creation. Rhythm of nature. Assess the rhythm of nature. Nature deficit disorder is what we're suffering in this world today. We have more kids with different kinds of mental illnesses. The kids compare their mental illnesses today. It's so incredibly sad. Most of these kids aren't even getting out, and all we're asking for 20 minutes minimum a day to get out. That gets your vitamin D, but it just gets you back in touch. We are creatures and we need to be out there, okay? And it's not being in your car. That doesn't count as being in nature. You gotta be out in nature. So we need to assess what keeps me from being out there. And I know I get the excuse that it's too hot, but I grew up in Texas. I grew up in Houston. I mean, believe me, we had contests on who could swat the most flies. And I know exactly what it tastes like to drink out of a water hose. And a water hose is very, it's a very soothing to me if I drink out of a water hose. That smell from the water hose reminds me of my childhood, you know? So this is important. No, I mean, obviously it's icy outside, but we can really get outside pretty much anytime. And sweating's good for us. It's good for our body to sweat. Human beings are nature. We're organisms living and breathing in this massive ecosystem of the earth. Nature contains truth that are inexpressible in speech and writing, and we're deeply moved when we feel them. And we know that this is what Jesus used in all of his parables. See how the flowers grow and the field grow. They don't labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in his splendor was dressed like one of these. I love like when you drive along and you see one of those fields, just solid yellow flowers. I mean, it's just amazing, right? How it could be that way. But it makes us feel good when we see that. So nature is part of our life. The earth is our collective body. That's what she says in her book. The earth is our collective body. It is a subject. It's not an object. It's a collective consciousness is found in this earth. Natural rhythms and cycles are found there. Every one of these seasons are the seasons of our heart. We have a winter heart. We have a spring heart. You know, you can feel that spring heart. I mean, every one of us, we may not be in school anymore, but we get spring fever when it starts feeling that way. Even before the weather changes, we can feel it inside of our body. The natural laws of life are seen in nature. Nature is our teacher and it's our friend. It's our teacher and it's our friend. And we're seeing so much about the climate disasters going on right now. Nature can't speak for itself. Only we can speak for nature. And part of it is you start getting back into yourself, and kind of like what Angel was talking about, being at some of those higher levels, you can't help but know and be hurt by some of the ways that things that are happening in nature. So we got to get out there and do our part, but most of all, just be in it and go to that tree in your backyard and say, hey, friend, have you missed me? And it will say, yes, it has missed you. All right, rhythm of sleep. So many people are having trouble with sleep these days. And in many ways, it's because we have ICU psychosis. We're working on those computers or cell phones till late at night. We need 7 to 9 hours of a night of sleep. Okay, it's so important. You need to look and see if I'm not getting that. Am I drinking caffeine? Am I working on my computer till late at night? Ideally, in the very beginning of this talk, we talked about the rhythm of the day. Y'all watched the Andy Griffith show. I think most of y'all remember that. But if you think about the Andy Griffith show, they ate dinner and then they went on the porch and played the guitar. They did not get on their computer because they didn't have the computer then. But it was a time to relax and get ready for bed at night. Okay. One of our biggest things that has kept us from doing this is not really technology, it's light. You know, back before they had light, people had no choice. They had to go to bed. You know, remember when it snowed, when we had the storm back in February, and many of us didn't have lights. We didn't have internet. We didn't have anything, you know, and it's like, we just like got all freaked out about it. But it's like, you go, I guess it's time to go to bed, right? So that's one of the things, is that because we have all of this, we think that we're supposed to use it. And so we have to get back to look at what our body rhythm is. If our body's out of rhythm, in many ways, we did it to it. Okay. So think about what keeps you from getting that good night's sleep. And Jesus says, come away with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. It's in scripture. Rhythm of creating. Everybody has got something. We are co-creators with God. Jesus was an amazing carpenter and he enjoyed storytelling too. Okay. People always say, oh, I'm not an artist. I'm not creative. I'm not this. Everybody is creative in some way. Even if it's just coloring in a coloring book, you know. Now, I like a coloring book that has a big bear in it or a big something, not these adult coloring books. Those, like, to me, stress me out. I just want something big that I can color, that I don't have to think about. And if I want to color that bear turquoise, I can do it because it's my bear. But just coloring with crayons, and I have to have Crayola crayons because they smell so good and they take me all the way back, just like that water hose takes me all the way back, right? So it doesn't have to be something fancy, okay? Just do something in creativeness. It could be music, could be gardening. Playing in the dirt is one of the best things ever. Sticking up dirt, putting your hands in the dirt. Photography, that is kind of a cool thing about our cell phones. Sewing, painting, even if it's paint by number, who cares? Writing, carpentry. I love to journal. I have so many journals. I just finished this one and I get so sad when I finish one of my journals because I got to figure out a new one to start. But I collage in my journal. I write in my journal. I tear words out. I put it in there. If someone sends me a great email or a great whatever, I put it in my journal. Okay. So it's a way I create all the time. See how you feel when you create, but this we've really lost. We've lost this a lot. And why do we create? It strengthens the right brain. We are in our left brain way too much. That's our logic brain. It gives us energy. It restores the body rhythm. It's a language of the heart. Our heart understands in metaphor and symbol. It's a pre-verbal language. That's why Jesus uses parables. When you read parables, they don't hit you the same every single time. That's because your heart's always in a different place. It lives in that spiral. We touch the essence of ourself. It enhances motor skills, it reduces stress, and it's a way to practice presence and process. I have one of my clients, what she did was she found Legos. She found Legos. And she made a typewriter and she did what else did she do? She did a bus. She did it was like the bus in England that they have. She could not wait to get home every day to work on this. And she didn't eat. She wasn't hungry when she was doing it. It's amazing. But that was the way she did her creativity. So it doesn't have to be fancy, and nobody, who's to judge it? It's whatever you like to do. There's no right or wrong with it. Okay. Assess the rhythm of your relationships. What is the order of relationships? The order of relationships is first you and God. That's your first order. You can't know who you are unless you and God have this relationship. Your second is your significant other. Okay. Your husband, your wife, whoever that may be, that's the second most important relationship in your life. The third is if you have a family, whether it's kids, extended family, parents, whatever it is. And the fourth is work. Work is the fourth. Okay. And then your leisure activities are after that. But what happens in our world now, because now people can get us 24/7, is oftentimes our work is getting moved up higher and higher. Franklin Covey, in the 7 qualities of healthy people, I only remember one thing, but it's that your family is important but not urgent. If your family or you have become urgent, it means that you have gotten out of the correct level of relationships. Okay. So assess your rhythm of your relationships. Do you respect yourself? How do you nurture your own relationship with yourself, with your spouse, or your significant other? How is your client's relationship with your children, with your parents? And we need loving relationships. It decreases loneliness in ourselves and others. It nurtures ourselves and others, and it encourages ourselves and others. So always shake it up a bit. Yeah, you can have little dates at your house or whatever, but I know one of the things my husband and I've always done is we've always traveled. Even when the kids were little, we made sure that we went places where it was just us two. Okay. So do those same things. I know my daughter and her boyfriend does it. I know my son and his husband do it. So those are the things that you need to do to nurture that. The other things is have a ritual. I know my husband and I have this ritual is like, we never leave the house without kissing each other goodbye. Ever, ever. And even if it's, oh, did I remember to kiss you goodbye? If I didn't, then you go back and you do it again. Right. And that establishes this. And every time you do that, just like I talked about the adrenaline piece of it, every time you do that, it puts something inside of you that's just a piece of peace. Okay. So we want to know that because that's sometimes a person we're closest to, we can take it out on. And that's not who we want to take it out on. That's the person that we need in our life and that we need to nurture. And it's the same thing for ourselves. We take it out on our own self too. When you see yourself in the mirror in the morning, you go up to yourself and go, hey, self, thank you so much for what we got through yesterday. We are really tired yesterday, but we really pushed the envelope. We're going to kind of take it a little bit easier today. But don't scream at yourself. Don't yell at yourself. Don't call yourself names. Okay. If you didn't do your best, say, you know, self, we really weren't up to snuff yesterday. We really need to do a little bit better today. Okay. So be kind. And Sabbath, what is Sabbath? Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. 6 days a week you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. And we see this in Exodus. It is a commandment. Okay. One of the reasons is when we have the energy crisis, I always say the energy crisis is within ourselves. It's within ourselves. So we only have so much energy in this body. I know after passing the age of 60, I know my energy is less and less. I think that was the biggest thing I noticed when I passed 60 was that it's like, oh my goodness, I'm tired or more. And the good thing about being tired or more is I don't care as much sometimes if I still have stuff left on my desk. It's like, I couldn't do that if you paid me. I cannot beat this ox anymore. I'm done, you know. And my anxiety, that I have anxiety, and my anxiety is a blessing too. If my anxiety starts getting high, I know that I've pushed the limit and I've gotten past my rhythm. And I have to apologize to my body and I have to say, I will get back on the bandwagon and I will do what we need to do. Okay. So your body is a gift. All right. Do you have one day off a week? When I say one day off, that means like you close down emails, you put an out of office reply if you can, whatever it is, so that you have that day off. Okay. I've just now structured mine where I'm working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I need to remember to change my phone message because I didn't look at my messages. Someone said, oh, I've been trying to get a hold of you. And now when I looked back, it was like I had messages on Friday and Monday. But I'm not working on those days anymore, but I do need to inform people of that. Okay. Have a daily meditation or prayer practice. I recommend Marion Woodman. She passed away a couple of years ago, famous Jungian analyst. She said, we need an hour of soul time a day, an hour of soul time. People think they just have to fit it in. I promise you, it's my favorite part of the day. I call it coffee with God. That's the first thing I do. I go and get my cup of coffee. I sit in my prayer room or I sit up on my bed. I light a candle, turn the lights off. Some dog jumps in the bed with me and I sit there and I sip on my coffee and I'm just with God. Okay. Right now I've been praying with with a doll because my spiritual director needs me to get into this place inside of me. And this doll is really helping do that. And then after that, I'll get up. I might do my journal, do some readings, whatever it is. But that is a ritual I've been doing for 20 plus years. Always. If I don't ground in that ritual, I am messed up. Sabbath restores body rhythm and allows the Creator to nourish our souls. So the very last piece on this is a piece for you. It's a piece for you to look and see how you can take all of these levels from the 4 levels of healing and see how you can start really incorporating this within your life. So it's an algorithm. So the little open square says, what is it going to take me to be able to have proper nutrition and to eat at the table? Maybe I need a meal plan. Maybe I need, whatever it is to get you to that table. Okay. I need to look at my schedule and don't try to tackle everything at once. Maybe it's just like this week, I'm going to eat breakfast at the table on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. And use those SMART goals. Do it something that, you know, you've got a goal to it. It's measurable, it's attainable, and it's time limited. Okay, great. You got those 3 days out. Next week, add in Tuesday. Okay. Until you just kind of keep adding it up. But if we try to tackle everything at once, we're overwhelmed. Okay. The reason why I say that meal planning is so important, look at what your schedule looks like, is it makes our body, it's like a little kid. It makes me feel comfortable that I know I'm going to have a meal. I know what's going to happen. Exercise and movement. Get a pair of tennis shoes, find some exercise tapes, but we got to figure something out. Same thing, start slowly. If you start fast, I don't understand why people do this. They go, well, I'm thinking about starting running again. And they haven't even been exercising for years. It's like, why is running exercise? I hate running. Walking's great. You know, you don't need to run. No. And then these people, I see these people out here running, they got their knee brace on and everything else. Is like, hello, you got a knee brace on. I think your knee doesn't like running, you know, but the head still wants to run, right? It's like, no, that knee's got to last me the rest of my life. Okay. So figure out what it is and do it, but work your way up. Don't go out for an hour if you haven't been exercising at all. Start at 20 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, and keep increasing. Okay. Sleep. You got to have sleep. If you're not sleeping, you can't do any of this. Okay. And that means that if I'm not sleeping, my adrenaline is never getting down. I'm not going into those levels. And God is the dream maker. We want to get into that REM sleep, and we want to get into that time of our dreaming. That's how our mind sees, our unconscious sees what happened during the day. That's where the stories come out. Dreams are so wonderful. I absolutely love dreams, and to interpret dreams and to walk with people in their dreams. Dreams are so incredibly cool, you know, and God is telling us something in those. My spirit, my prayer and meditation time, probably many of you guys, y'all are here now, and that's probably something you already have. And you want to switch it up too. It doesn't always have to be the same. If you're not getting anything out of your prayer life, God might be saying, hey, I want you to change. I want you to do something different and figure out what that is. Okay. There's so many things out there now. And nature is part of our spirit. Okay. There's so many people looking back into like Native American spirituality. I've always thought that was so cool anyway, but the Native Americans know so much because they are really one with nature, and they can read nature, and just getting outside helps you with all of that. My mind. Remember when they taught about the mind is not just emotions. The mind is also our mental level too, that level of our growing and learning. So if you work, you go to your little, whatever your work retreat things are, and you learn a little bit more, and you're so excited to be able to put that back into your practice, right? It kind of invigorates you, but also go learn about creativity. You know, maybe you want to learn how to sew, or you learn to paint, or go to Pinot's Palette, or do it online, or do something. Okay. And then other kinds of learning that you want to do. I love to learn anything. I just think it's all just cool stuff. Right now, horses are my thing. So I learn everything I can about horses, you know, and I can't get enough of that. So emotions. What is my self-talk like? All right. I would say this is one of the things to start right out of the bat, is try to see how you can improve that self-talk. You know, those little erasable markers, you can write things on your mirror, you know, maybe it's some little saying that you want to say to yourself or whatever, because then you can just erase it off. And then we talked about those relationships with yourself, your significant other, and then all those other people that are in your life. So I think that's what I have for you today. I say, okay, I'm gonna stop this sharing and go back to you people. So any questions or comments, or I know it was a lot, but you have the handout. So I just wanted you to see what I see nourishment is in a different way, and all encompassing body, mind, and spirit, and kind of pull it together.
So I'm curious about what are some of the comments and stories that were coming up as Laura went through, particularly around, well, any of it really. I'm just wondering, is anybody having trouble sleeping these days? I see Angel, but there may be others. Go ahead, Angel.
I just want to say that I really appreciate everything you said in your presentation. I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like I'm a total living example of everything that you're preaching here. On a serious note, especially over the course of the past 8 years, a tremendous amount of changes came into my life on all these different levels. And I myself personally I've never been a fan of change. What that led me to was that I was okay with a so-so crappy life because that was a companion I could depend on. It was dependable. And it took a feeling of courage to make, even though I consider myself a brave person, it took a feeling of courage to step out and make a change to have a good life. And I've learned that that is something I can depend on as well. And so that, that is my story. So, but like I said, I really applaud you for your message here. It's awesome.
It's beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Angel.
Who's next? Go ahead, Craig.
I'm thinking I'm doing okay with the exercise and with the food. I loved my arugula. I just love my arugula and cucumber that I had before this class. But yeah, I've moved my household not once, but twice during this pandemic, once last November and once, and again, just this past week. So I've had a little issue with the sleeping. So because of just, all the, the million details that have to be taken care of when you're moving your residence.
Yes.
And
yes.
But yeah, and some of the other areas. And so now that I'm actually in the house, in the condo in Austin, and we're going to settle in, and then I'm hoping to get back to a better sleep situation. In the meantime, I have Irene from Resurrection praying for me because she's our sleep prayer lady.
Yes. But you're so right, Craig. I mean, because our body is used to a ritual and rhythm. And so now moving to a new place, it's kind of been upended, is what happened. So it's just like, it's, your mind is used to it in a certain way. And so it's kind of looking for that sameness, which isn't going to come back. But now eventually this will be what that normalcy is. Some people have trouble sleeping if they go to a hotel and the bed is faced a different way. I mean, sleep is a pretty funny thing for some people. So, and so you do honor that, you honor it, you understand it, because sometimes we just try to fight it and we yell at our body about it. But the more we can honor that, a lot of times it can help the body kind of settle in. So talk to ourselves like we talk to a small child. Yeah.
What has been some of the challenges anyone has faced during the pandemic with just food selection? Go ahead, Terry, and then Linda.
Well, I just retired right before the pandemic. I retired at the end of 19, and because I worked downtown, and my days started, I'd get up at like 5 and get home at 6 or 6:30 at night. And so fast food or takeout or whatever was the choice of the day. But right after I retired and the pandemic came, just a few months after I retired, we got back to we couldn't eat out. So we just started eating healthier because we just didn't buy those things that, and we started cooking differently. I grilled a lot and stopped cooking foods that you fry. We stopped eating fried foods. Both of us lost weight. my partner was already walking in the evenings, but I hadn't got that because I would come home from work and I'd be like, oh, I don't feel like walking, you know. But so about 9 o'clock at night in the summer, because it's so hot, we just walk around our neighborhood, and there's 2 or 3 other people that do it in the evenings too, because you know, it's as cool as it's going to get in Houston. And it's very interesting that even though when the pandemic started, when they started opening restaurants, we realized we started falling back in that habit
Yep.
of going out to eat. And we both saw ourselves put some weight back on. Even though we were still walking, we still walk every night. And now it's just, and all of a sudden we were talking, and, you know, we've got to get back in that routine of preparing meals at home, and instead of picking up fast food just because we can now. And so we've started to do that again. But the walking is amazing. And being out in nature, I always try to get outside. And even when we were in the pandemic, and I mean, we were locked down. We don't have a big yard. We have a patio home, but we've got a nice little secret garden back there with flower beds and potted plants and places to sit. And, you know, and I would just go out there and walk in the grass, take my shoes off and walk in the grass, or just go out and trim the roses or pull the weeds out of the flower beds. And you're right. There's something about putting your hands in the earth and getting dirt on your hands, and that I don't know, it's just gives me a different kind of energy, and keeps me in a different level of less anxiety. But we just learned to do a lot of things different. And I know the pandemic was not good for a lot of people. A lot of people had a hard time, but we started a lot of new practices that were healthier and better for us, that have changed our lives. So I used to be really so social that I never had any time. You know, I'd get off work and I'd go to choir, and I'd get off work and I'd go meet my book study group, and then I'd get off work and I'd go, you know, and I didn't take time for the nature things and the time with God. And I find it so different when I get up now and dedicate my first 15 or 20 minutes of the day to God and meditate, read something encouraging for the day. Anyway, that's kind of how we managed the pandemic. It changed our lives.
And you listened to your body when your body started gaining weight. Instead of just saying, "Oh, it's gaining weight again," you said you knew your body was telling you something,
Right?
And so you reversed it. So, and I imagine there was other things going on in your body too, that it didn't like all that fast food.
Oh yeah. Didn't feel
So,
good.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you're a case study. Yes. Thank you.
Linda?
Linda.
Well, one of the challenges that we had when the pandemic first started was, you know, we didn't know if it was safe to go to the grocery store. So we started doing the ordering online and doing the pickup of our groceries. And it just felt very weird to me that someone else was picking out my fruits and vegetables, because we eat a lot of fresh food. And it felt weird that I couldn't go every day to the grocery store to get what I was going to make for that day. And, you know, we just got used to it. Then, you know, we just had what they gave us, you know, because then you have to do substitutions if they're out of something. So that was, at the beginning, was a little bit hard to get used to.
There's something grounding about going to the grocery store. You know, I mean, there's so many people that hate it, but there is something grounding about that. Going, getting it, feeling it, touching it. There really is something about that. So I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else who hasn't yet, or who would like to share, who, you know, okay, JB?
How do you break up with your relationship with food? How do you?
It's a hard breakup. It's a very hard breakup. And I think a lot of it, JB, is what we, there's so much that we talked about, but it's kind of taking it that one step at a time and just seeing which one of these 4 areas of life that you can start adding into your life, as opposed to trying to do it all at once. So it might be, if it's the exercise level 1, maybe that's your first step without even touching anything else. You know, not giving yourself extra food because of it, but just kind of keeping everything the same, but just starting out that 1 level. So that's what it is.
Okay, thank you.
I always say it's just that whole food thing can be a really, really bad lover. That's what can happen because they don't go away easily. So,
Rhea, I was wondering if you had anything you wanted to ask or share. You good? Okay. Okay. Vicky or Duana or Dawn?
I was just going to say that the whole thing about grocery shopping is kind of a meditative practice for me. Even during the height of the pandemic, I tried Instacart once, and it was only because I was sick and had to quarantine. And it didn't do it for me. I love to just go to the grocery store, touch the food, go down the aisle, even when it's incredibly insane and I have to ask for my 6 feet. I still love it. It feeds my soul and my
Yeah,
body too.
and your body too. Yeah, yeah. There's some, and you know, just the grocery store. There's some aspects of it is kind of being in nature. To be honest with you, the first time I kind of discovered it was when I was cutting a tomato one time, and it just started like speaking to me. I know that sounds nuts, but that is nature. So,
Go ahead, Vicky.
One of the biggest things for me when the pandemic started and I started working at home, it was right as we were finding out what was going on with my autoimmune system and the changes that I needed to make. Well, we ordered groceries in and we got that down great. But the big thing that happened was I became vegan. And a total change in the types of food I ate. And the other thing was giving up complex sugar.
wow.
So the hardest breakup for me, JB, is sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the rest of it is okay. But every once in a while, it's like, I gotta have something sweet that is a candy bar or something. And that's what I find the hardest thing. But if I do the complex sugar, then my joints hurt so bad that I can barely move.
Yep.
The vegan is like every once in a while, if I'll go out with somebody, I'll have meat, but then I don't like it. Everything tastes different now, and things I used to not like, I like. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't like green bell peppers. I don't, and they're great now. But then we drink oat milk and use that instead. And it's like finding a whole new way to listen to your body. And at this point, I've dropped, in the year and a half, I've dropped 43 pounds.
That's wonderful.
I didn't get it fast, and I'm not going to lose it fast.
Okay. No, and that's the way you want to do it. And also, Vicki, it's you described the same scenario where you listened to your body. When you went back and did something and you felt it in your body, you went, okay, your body told you, I don't like this. I don't like this. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to have a sweet. Maybe you're going to have it. But I think if we start saving it, then we enjoy it so much more.
But how do we get rid of the brain telling us we still want something?
Right. So what the problem is that, that the sweets are just like alcohol. If anybody's got alcohol addiction within their family, a lot of times people also have the sweet addiction too. Okay. Sometimes people aren't alcoholic, but they have the sweet addiction piece of it. So it is a craving is what it is, right? And then if we answer it, then it just makes us want more, because our dopamine receptors are very, very greedy receptors. And then they just want more and more and more, and it takes more and more and more to satisfy it. So sad to say, some of it is just by staying off of it, but then when it's a special occasion, go and enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And yes, I am an alcoholic, 27 years in recovery. So
There, okay, well, there you go. That's
So
right.
that
Yeah.
answers the sugar issue.
That answers the
Thank you.
sugar issue. Uh-huh. Yes.
Well, this tonight has been phenomenal. I hope you all feel the same way. And to have Laura close us out with the one thing we all love and the one thing we all need, which is good nutrition and good food. Like we've been doing for each of the series, we've been saying one word and we've been putting in the chat. And so, but this time I'd like for y'all to just unmute yourself and just kind of say the words so that just the words that come up for you, and not all at the same time, obviously, but to so that Laura knows, just how helpful this has been for you tonight. So what is it that you want to leave her with?
Spectacular.
Empowerment.
Thought-provoking.
Compassionate healer.
Dawn says filling and satisfying.
Nourishment for the soul and mind and body.
Empowering and enlightening.
George, you
Energizing.
want, say it again.
Energizing.
Energize. And George, you want to say your part?
Yeah, I like your usage of the scriptures, Laura. Thought they were very helpful.
Thank you.
Enjoyed that.
Good. I'm glad you did.
Well, I appreciate again, Laura, you coming, but more importantly, all of you who showed up to be nourished and to be fed tonight. And as we continue with listening, it's helpful for myself and Vicki Hopper to know what it is that you want to hear more of so that we can put together programs like this that is meaningful and helpful. But it's so good to see you tonight. And believe it or not, this is it. I'm sure we'll come together. Yeah, I know.
Until next time.
Yeah, that's exactly, until next time. But thank you all so much for tonight. Again, thank you, Laura. And so we now know that we are gonna, and what I will say this, one thing that I did appreciate tonight is when you said to start adding one thing. So we have talked about the spiritual aspect, the mental aspect of our healing, the emotional aspect, and also now tonight, the physical aspect. So we're walking away with just adding one change, just that one change. Okay. All right. And I know Craig says, what am I supposed to do on Monday nights? Well, we'll
Mom, what am I supposed to do on Mondays now?
on Mondays now. Yeah, we'll have to, if Mondays work, we'll figure it out. Just let me know what you want and we'll hopefully help make it happen. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure being
Night.
with y'all.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank
You're welcome.
you. Bye, Laura.
Bye, guys. Bye, JV.